This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast. All things Cleveland sports with your host, John Suchan. Well, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast. How is everybody? If you are tuning in, you're probably listening to this audio on Wednesday, August 2nd. We are recording this on August 1st. So if any breaking news happens with the Cleveland sports scene or the Cleveland Brownies, we will be a few hours behind. Let's hope nothing happens, right? We'll just so I'm trying to play some background music here. Let's see if this one works. I think that this is a little bit better. Okay. So the Brownies play the New York Jets on Thursday Night Football, part of the Hall of Fame game. And Browns fans nationwide are getting geared up. We have been waiting for some football, and we're going to get some football. So thank you for joining us, part of this Johnny Cleveland show. We're on the Fanatical Elves Network, and I'm your host, John Suchan, and glad to have you along. Again, we're part of this network that is growing by leaps and bounds. I'm like serious when I say leaps and bounds. Our downloads last month were up some 60%. Amazing, just amazing that you are tuning in, spreading the love. Share our network, share our podcast with your friends and your family members. All those of you who are diehard Browns fans, let them know about the Fanatical Elves Network. Have them tune in to Apple, Spotify, download our programming. Hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. We will not disappoint you. We are entertainers, and we are Browns fans. And we love talking about the Browns, and we are like you. We talk about the Browns in ways that you talk about the Browns. We're not your high-profile things that you're going to tune in. It's, on your streaming ESPNs and all these places. I was listening earlier today. They were, Aaron Rodgers. So now Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets starting quarterback. By the way, I want to give props to Joel Cade and Elliott, who had their Cleveland Browns football philosophy and rocket science. And they had a guest from the New York Jets affiliate for the Fans First Sports Network, which we are part of as well. And it was really cool to give a listen to their show that came out earlier this morning. Give that a listen. Tune into that. They interview the Jets colleague and had some really great conversations. And part of the conversation revolved around Aaron Rodgers. First off, Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. He will go down as one of the best to ever play the game. I get all that. But over the last several years, many of you, including myself, have become, I'm rather annoyed by an Aaron Rodgers. One, he's 40 years old. Two, he's rather cocky. You got to be cocky in the game of the NFL. I get it. But our colleague Elliott really broke it down and discussed at length about how Aaron Rodgers is really not the quarterback that he used to be. And obviously, age plays into that. He's 40 years old, but it was funny to listen to his take, which is pretty factual and described in detail how, Rodgers' yards per carry and all this when he would rush the ball has dwindled, and obviously he's a veteran quarterback. He doesn't want to run a lot. I get all that, but it does show how age does play into it. And there is only one Tom Brady, and Tom Brady was 45,000 years old and still playing football. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, wants to catch him or something like that. So now he's playing for the Jets, and this guy for the Jets, he had some really good takes, and I thought it was good. But, Jets fans are a little delusional as well, or more delusional than us Browns fans, I think. he was talking a little bit about Zach Wilson, who's going to be quarterbacking uh, on the Hall of Fame game come Thursday. And Zach Wilson, this young kid that played for the Jets, they drafted him high, or wasn't he the number one draft pick? I have to go back and double check that, but he's been a dud, and he's going to continue to be a dud. And the kid that spoke about the Jets quarterback and Aaron Rodgers. First, he was very high on Aaron Rodgers and saying how well. And I hear this too from a lot of people in the NFL who follow, Aaron Rodgers, saying, "Well, he was the MVP only back in 2021." Okay, fine, but then this comparison of, does he have the best wide receivers? Garrett Wilson is there now for Aaron Rodgers. So I mean, the whole thing with Aaron Rodgers and what should we expect from him, and then this additional conversation about Zach Wilson. It was just funny to get those takes from the Jets perspective, because they're a little bit delusional. I don't see Aaron Rodgers doing anything spectacular this year with the New York Jets. They are the New York Jets, and they will always be the New York Jets. And a quarterback like Zach Wilson, he's had his time. He will be a lifetime backup, kind of like other quarterbacks that have come and gone. And he should never have been put in that position with the Jets, but he was horrible. And we'll see what happens this season for the Jets. But obviously Thursday, we're not going to see these players except for Zach Wilson. We won't see Aaron Rodgers. We might see him on the sideline. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Is he even going to attend the game? But it'll be good to have some football Thursday night. Usually with these games, the Hall of Fame games, most fans like ourselves don't pay attention to this game. And the fact that the Browns are in the game now, that has kind of changed our perspective this season. We've had an extra week of practices down in Greenbrier, and that's all fine and dandy. The team did come back. There have been stories circulating today. Don't know how real the stories are, but they have been shared on some different Cleveland Browns platforms about the team coming back from West Virginia on a chartered United Airlines flight that supposedly they say was trashed. Now, the news is out there. Some news outlets are reporting this. Others have not said a word of it. The team hasn't come out and said anything about it. Today they had practices at Berea for the first time. No one said a word. I don't believe about it. So don't know, but it is worth mentioning just because, if it is a true story, which there's no solid information coming back from any either the airline or the team. I mean, obviously the team would want to downplay if something like that happened. They were supposedly had trashed or left a lot of garbage on the flight. It does, it gets me to thinking, if that's the case, I don't, and let's say that it is the case, then for me as a fan and as someone who's actually been a coach myself, it's concerning on many levels, because you have players that did that, and you have a coaching staff or people that are in charge of these players. And obviously it's a professional game. It's a little different, but it doesn't always sit well in my mind in those sorts of situations. I can always remember there was a time when I was a younger coach, basketball. I was coaching basketball, and we had I was with my family, and we had gone to a fast food establishment back in the day, and we were coming into the establishment, and there was a junior or high school basketball team that was leaving the premises. They had been sitting in their lobby and eating their meals. And I've probably shared this story before, but it just shocked me that that you saw these adults, coaches of this middle school or high school team that got up with their ball players and really left. They left. And when they left all this trash and the food items that had been eaten and garbaged in this huge lobby. And just for me personally, as a coach myself, who takes players and student athletes to various events, that kind of activity is just appalling. And it's funny because it goes to this whole thing when you have coaches that coach these players and they talk about how they get supposed to do this and that and respect and all this and work hard and all these things. They talk to these athletes that way on the court or on the field. They didn't transfer it where they needed to when they were out in public, and that's just a crime. And I've always remembered that moment because I always thought to myself, whoever those coaches were are doing a piss poor job of teaching these student athletes anything about life, and they really missed the boat on that one. And it was very, very. I remember that moment, and it's still today. So it brought back when I heard this story about the Brownies, and it could be a fictitious story. And if it is a fictitious story, fantastic. The reason I bring it up though is because there's been more than one source that has been providing information that saying that this was the case. It would be nice if either the airline or the team spoke of it. I don't know specifically if anybody asked that specific question today, but again, if they did do this, and again, this is at a different level, but again, these players are athletes and they are responsible for themselves. It's not like you're teaching a 13 or 14 or 15-year-old student athlete how to go about being representing their school or their team, but they're representing the Cleveland Browns. They're representing their families and all of this. And if Kevin Stefanski, who's the head coach of the team, I just find it interesting because you look at all these other things, and I'm a supporter of Kevin Stefanski, and we've talked about Kevin Stefanski enough, and many people believe that I hate Kevin Stefanski. However, this kind of episode goes to this whole, if this episode was true, goes to how does this coach hold a locker room and build a chemistry and all of this stuff. If they're talking about sharing stories and bonding and all this stuff that goes on at Greenbrier and spending time sharing personal stories about one another. Okay, if that happened, great. Then why isn't that kind of stuff that's happening and transitioning if this were the case in this actual story? There's some sort of disconnect. And that's what I'm getting at. And a lot of fans have talked about Kevin Stefanski in different ways. This is one way that I've always thought there's just something amiss. If when you listen to his press conferences, when you listen to how he reacts and talks to his team when they're in the huddles and whatnot, there just seems to be something that's not being taught or something that's not being captured by the athletes that are supposed to be listening to him and being guided by him. Could be completely off base, and maybe you think that I completely hate Stefanski. I do not. But if this story actually occurred, I'd like to know, did Kevin Stefanski and did the coaching staff address whatever happened? Are there repercussions for what happened? Or is it going to be a brush off? And if it did happen, and if they just said, well, boys will be boys, or these guys, that gets back to kind of what Stefanski said about the team fight the other day. He said in his press conference that these guys are just, they're football players, and this is what it's going to be. The guys, it's hot and they get bothered and they're going to start battling one another. And they, and he basically dismissed it, saying this is football and this is what happens. And I just have to disagree with that. I mean, I get it. You can get angry and get frustrated and whatnot. And you've been working and coaching and playing hard against your opponent and your teammates. But it's a little bit of a brush off. Like, why are people, don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. And in his mind, maybe it's not a big deal. And that's concerning to me as a observer of this team and where this team can go under his leadership. So we'll see what happens. It did sort of give me pause with this latest story, and let's hope it was all a fabrication, but it was worth talking about for the entertainment purposes of this show. So, all right. So the Brownies play Thursday. Now, Kellen Mond is going to be the quarterback for the Brownies. Now, he is the Browns' third string quarterback, and he's played in one game when he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings in a dust-up role. I think he threw 2 passes for 5 yards. And so not a lot is, he hasn't shown a lot, but he had a lot of promise coming out of Texas A&M. He's a tall kid. He's 6'3", and we'll see. Josh Dobbs is the number 2 guy. He's not playing in this game. Kellen Mond is, and he'll be backed up by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie quarterback out of UCLA. So I'll be anxious to see how those two play on Thursday. I think most of us who are Browns fans will definitely be paying attention to those 2 guys, plus the plethora of wide receivers that the team has. And that should be fun to see what they all have out there and how they perform against the New York Jets. Cedric Tillman is the rookie kid from Tennessee who's made a pretty good splash since he's arrived, and he's got a lot of talk today from the coaches and those players like Mond and Robinson about his abilities. The other player that keeps getting mentioned all the time is Elijah Moore, who I'm getting a little bit, this Elijah Moore hype is, remember a couple years ago, DPJ was getting all that hype when he would catch a pass, and, when Odell Beckham Jr. was still here and Jarvis Landry, and yet, everybody was like, oh my gosh, Donovan Peoples-Jones caught a pass in practice. And that's all that's happening these days. And it's just hilarious to me, the hype that gets built. This kid, Elijah Moore, yes, I hope that he does good things for the Browns. But again, I will remind everybody, go back and look at his stat line, and everybody will come back at me and say, well, he's just going to be a different player. The Browns are going to use him out of the backfield, and he could be that third running back, wide receiver guy that, they could do all sorts of things. Alan Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator, was even just comparing him to Cordell Cobbs, who used to play for the Green Bay Packers, and his role with the Packers when Van Pelt was working with them, and describing Elijah Moore in sort of a similar role. And look, if he, like I just said, he can help the team, fantastic. But his stat lines, he's garnered 800 or 900 yards total. He's got 6 touchdowns to his name. Good. But he only had 1 this past season. He had 5 his rookie year. Yes, Garrett Wilson came back. I get it. He's only had 1 really exceptional game. That was a game where he caught 8 passes for 144 yards or something like that against the lowly Miami Dolphins 2 years ago. Well, they weren't that lowly, but still, that's the best game that he had. Most other games, he's caught a couple passes here, a couple passes there, but nothing spectacular. So I want to know why everyone is on the hype train for this kid when Deshaun Watson is going back. He's got all these other weapons, including Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, David Njoku. Why all of a sudden is Elijah Moore going to get the ball so many more times than he did as a Jet? Okay, well, they're going to use him out of the backfield more when Nick Chubb isn't on the field or something like that. Okay, great. But there's only one football, and you can only run between 50 or 70 plays offensively in a game. On a good day, you run 70 maybe plays, 80 plays. So I just don't think there's enough room that Elijah Moore is going. I mean, if they're double teaming Amari Cooper, they're double teaming DPJ. Yeah, okay, fine. But I just don't see any of that happening. And I might be the only not Elijah Moore like hype fan. And no, I don't hate Elijah Moore like I hate Kevin Stefanski. But it is a little bit. Ugh. So the other guy that came into the other news here this week, free agency, Shelby Harris, who I've written about on Dog Pound Daily. He's an defensive lineman. The Browns are looking to still bring in some defensive guys to support the other guys that they already have, brought in like Dalvin Tomlinson. So Shelby Harris, who's played for the Denver Broncos and most recently the Seattle Seahawks, is still available, and the team supposedly brought him in for a talk yesterday. There hasn't been any news since then, and so some people are speculating yay or nay on that. I'm not sure how to take that either. We shall see. So that was the free agency news of the week. Yeah, I mean, the Browns are right now, we've had all these training camps. I think yesterday or today would be like day 10. They had they met over there in Berea, and the fans turned out for that. We'll talk a little bit about those fans and the coaches' reactions to today's practice. We're going to go ahead and pause for a quick break, and then we will be right back. We are the Johnny Cleveland podcast on the Fanatical Elves Network. Okay, we are back. We are the Johnny Cleveland podcast. I'm your host, John Suchan. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, on Twitter, I'm sorry, it's called X. What the hell? Elon Musk is an idiot. He's did you also see on Twitter? Okay, not Twitter, X. He got rid of the tweets. They're now called posts and reposts. So if you're on X now, which was Twitter, you'll have to repost or post our Johnny Cleveland podcast for the Fanatical Elves Network. The more that you repost and post and all that stuff, you're helping our network, and we really appreciate you as being that loyal Browns fan. Tune in. So later this week, which is like you're listening to me tomorrow. So we're recording this on a Tuesday night, August 1st. So this will be out tomorrow, August 2nd, when you're listening to me. So keep in mind, it's Wednesday now while you're listening. That we will have a pregame show with our Fanatical Elves contributors. Hopefully Elliot, Joel, Steve, Rod will be available. We're going to have a show prior to the Brownies playing Thursday night. We'll have a little post-game wrap-up show after that. So things to tune into. We also have Joel's What the Elf Was That show coming up. And then we've got Rod's Browns Blitz show. We already had Steve had his Dog Pound South show this week. So just some bringing you content all the time, every day. If you want new stuff, you want to hear the latest on Browns, tune into us. We are almost available 24/7. All right. So the Browns coaches, the defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, the offensive coordinator, Alan Van Pelt, the Bubba Vitrone guy, the special teams guy, they all spoke today. They all were coaches and talked about the progress the team is making. So they're all saying the same things like, we're making progress, but we got a lot of work to do, and we're ready to do a preseason game, but we're not ready for the regular season. And Van Pelt was asked about why the defense was so much better than the offense. And, the fact is that they were playing some of these moments down by the goal line offenses, and you have 5 or 10 yards to work. You're not going to, win a lot of those battles when it's just like a passing exercise. They weren't having Nick Chubb back there or whoever they're going to run as their second running back. Speaking of that, who are the Browns going to go with as their second running back? Are they going to stick with Elijah Moore? Are they going to give Jerome Ford a few more runs? He only has 12 yards to his name that he picked up last year as a rookie. Do the Browns still go out and pick up a veteran, someone like Zeke Elliott? He's still out there. I think, did Delvin Cook sign with the Jets, or is that in the works? Don't know if that's for sure yet or not. So anyway, Van Pelt talked offensively. He likes the deep offensive, the wide receiver room he's got. Jim Schwartz, I tell you, what a character. This guy is just, I'm just saying this again. I know you think I hate Stefanski, but if things go south fast, Jim Schwartz is an excellent fill-in if the Browns needed to fill in as a coach. He said all the things that you're supposed to say. He likes what the team is doing, the progress that they're making, but they have a lot of work to do. And he was, one of the issues that was addressed was, the linebackers, both Walker and Taki have been injured. They're coming back from injuries. What does this do for your linebacking room? And he, was positive about it, saying how it's giving the younger guys more opportunities and more time to kind of synchronize and learn the game when they don't have Walker and Taki there. So he sees it as an educational and athletic, getting those reps and all of that. So that's great. Bubba Patron, the best story of the day for him was how when he got to work this morning at 6 or whatever this morning in Berea, he thought he was late, that he had missed the memo or the text message from his coaching staff because all the Browns fans were already tailgating outside of the Berea training camp. So that was kind of a neat little story. So those are kind of where the team's coming from. They're going to see a lot of different players. We're going to see a lot of different players Thursday night. I'll be excited to watch. And, if you're watching by the end of the third and fourth quarter, bravo to you Browns fans. If the Browns were not playing, you and I both know that we would either have the game on as background noise or not watch the game at all. So this gives us Browns fans something to get excited about, talk about, write more stories about, do more podcasts about, because you are a diehard fan and you love the Browns. So we need you to follow our guests, again, the Fanatical Elves Network. We need you to tune into the Johnny Cleveland podcast. I bring you a show every week, at least, sometimes 2 in a week. We have our training camp shows that we've been running every day now. We've got Elliot's and Joel's show, the football philosophy and rocket science. We got Joel coming out with his What the Elf Was That. Steve did his show, like I said earlier in the show, with the Dog Pound South. And Rod brings his Browns Blitz show. On the weekends, we have the Any Given Sunday show, which we're going to be doing more like in the mornings of the Browns games. We will be pumping that Any Given Sunday show out to you prior to kickoff on Sunday. So that will be a regular Sunday morning programming. We'll also be bringing you instant reaction of Stefanski's press conference, plus a post-game show of the Browns games when the season starts. So much coming. We haven't had a giveaway on our Fanatical Elves Network for a while. We will be getting back to doing that again. We've given away shirts and all sorts of items. We've given away a pair of Browns tickets. We've got one of our fans has 2 tickets to go see the Baltimore Ravens in the game on October 1st. We can't wait to hear how he enjoys that experience. So I'll be up there too. I also write for Northeastern Ohio Sports Insiders and should have an additional gig during the Browns games for them. And I look forward to that experience. And then to be able to provide some inside information back to you, the loyal Browns fans. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We'll see you next week. And we'll have more to talk about. We'll have things, we'll review what happened with the Browns game on Thursday. We'll dive into all the positives and the negatives. And hopefully I won't hate Kevin Stefanski and I won't hate Elijah Moore any more than I do already. All right, take care, everybody, and go Browns. And I always like to end the show. You know what I say. Ready? You got to say it with me. Remember to keep smiling. Take care.